Wow.
Wow, this is some really deep stuff.
I don't know what just happened, but something happened inside of me. Something snapped. Something.
I wasn't expecting that
either. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. It's beautiful.
Monster is like really small, but it had to become that to stop me.
And then the hurt child became present when you mentioned it.
And I didn't realize this until now.
There were things that I didn't remember until now.
Funny. I haven't seen that before.
It feels like I'm the monster. I'm kind of seeing images of things. Of a world where they can exist. This clarity brings all kinds of answers.
It's clear. She hugged me and then went back to her place, I guess, in my heart. Oh, it wants to come out. It wants to bippity boppity boop Cinderella me. She's melted into my chest. It's ooey gooey.
All week been finishing things, cleaning up more, started eating vegetables again last week. And it kind of just started happening. It's almost like I just finished going through a meditation session.
I feel light. When you hit that first joint, in the morning, and
I actually feel a lot more awake.
Okay.
I've been thinking about parts a little bit. I was working with one today, getting to know a protector, and that was really interesting. It was around I was, you know what it was? I think I was getting to know the cringe one.
Mm-hmm.
And the cringe one has a surprising amount of anger, I guess.
Okay.
And it's about how it's about it's this parallel thing where I don't like to be vulnerable to other people because if they ask me how I'm doing or why I'm upset or something, they might be asking for their own purposes rather than to help me out. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that that's also going on inside my system, where this part doesn't want to look into certain things because it doesn't trust other parts to not criticize or mock or whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, when I say it that way, it might be a shame, an angry part reacting to the shaming part or something, but it's something like that. So I thought that was interesting. I don't necessarily know that I want to go into that because I like the way we've been going with Undeserver and stuff, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, very.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't look inward because other parts will mock.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had a good little moment with that angry part, just validating it, and it felt very good to validate it.
Nice.
Yeah, I felt like it was really nice because it was a lot of my attempts at doing IFS by myself have been very stressful because I'm trying to get something accomplished or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like I felt like I was actually able to connect to a part and in a meaningful way and have it give me it gave me a good response, so that showing me that I had clearly actually listened to it instead of just trying to push through has happened before. So that was really nice.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you up for some more of it?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to have a minute of meditation?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I'll set a timer.
Sounds good.
All right. So, any parts you'd like to get to know better or change your relationship with?
Let's see. I want to continue going into the grave. Something that I've noticed lately, although it's been going on for a long time, but I notice that I almost always wake up in the middle of the night sometime. It's not really alarming to me that happens. It's just like I sleep, I wake up, I go back to sleep, and then I wake up in the morning. But during these nighttime awakenings, I'll notice that the underlying feeling is very much one of sadness. And sadness is not something that I let myself experience a lot. So I think it's like this middle of the night catching me off guard. And I've also noticed that I have an impulse in the middle of the night when I wake up to get on my phone or do something to distract myself. But that if I don't, then the emotion is sadness. So that's clearly like a part that I want to address, and I want to work toward finding it and talking to it.
Yeah.
Not sure how many parts are in line in front of it, but
okay.
But yeah.
Are you able to locate it in your body or the sensations?
And the sadness definitely feels related to dying, although that might not be like the only thing.
How do you notice it?
It's heavy. Yeah, it's just very heavy and But even though I have the impulse to avoid it, it's not all bad.
You can acknowledge that impulse to avoid it. Let it know that you get it, you see it. It makes sense.
Yeah, the impulse to avoid it says paying attention to it would be too much.
Right. And that's what you do throughout the day. And when you're grabbing your phone.
Yeah, and also at night. Like throughout the day, it's like I don't even notice the sadness. But yeah.
Okay, so it's worried it'll be too much?
Yeah, too much. It's too much to like if I look toward it, if I let it intensify or let it explain itself, it's like it'll be too intense and it'll never be done. Also, like it will just lead me down a path of infinite sadness.
Okay. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that's like a reasonable fear in many ways, because I think like, obviously, unless I'm accessing self when I delve into it, that does run the risk of happening. So I think it's a realistic fear.
Okay. All right. So we want to look out for that, look out for any blended parts, and get to a place of self.
Yes.
Okay. Is anybody else up? Is anybody else vying for control?
There's really just one more that's the typical, like, not fully how do I put it? We've run into this one before. It's like the I'm in a Zoom call with another person one. and
right.
That's a very, very aware of every like little social thing that I do.
Yeah.
Yep. But that's really all the ones that I know are up for now.
Okay. I know one solution that we've discovered for that in the past is that you can ask for breaks.
Yes.
You can ask for minutes. You can hit mute.
Yeah.
And you can ask for cuts.
Cuts?
Edits.
Yes. I think. Does it need? Yeah, maybe just like 2 minutes or something.
Okay. I had another idea of something I could offer.
Oh yeah, what is it?
IFS over text.
That might be cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, wouldn't that ruin your whole podcast idea? But you have like a ton of podcasts in the backlog, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Although I do like some aspects of the call thing. I feel like maybe like for our next session we could try that. But I feel like for this one I want to stay this way. That sounds cool though. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I've done it a few times, and you know, it's slower, but when you and I already know each other pretty well, it's a lot of the emotionality that's normally absent can kind of assume, and like, I know these parts pretty well, and
that's cool. Yeah,
sort of works.
I'd love to try that. Yeah.
So those 2 minutes, you wanted to do that now?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. I'll set 2 timers.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I just chilled with that cringing part for a bit. I think it's a little chiller now.
And that one was kind of worried about the Zoom call.
It was worried about it's not worried about the Zoom call per se. It's just worried about like it's like criticizing every tiny perceived like social faux pas that I might possibly ever do. So it's not even like something that I would worry about if I didn't need it to concretely move out of the way in order to get to my other emotions. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm not like worried about I'm not worried about like the fact that that these calls are published or about you in particular or anything like that. It's just like the real time experience of interacting itself.
Yeah. I get that too.
Yeah, I think it probably is a pretty.
Sometimes I like to imagine that I'm in another place, or like I'm walking in the woods with someone.
That's
something about that just makes me feel more free, and I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll try that.
The part that was concerned about looking at sadness being too intense and endless. How's it doing?
It just wants to make sure there's a way to deal with sadness if we delve into it.
I think so.
Yeah. It kind of sees it like jumping off a cliff. Like there's a cliff over there and I can see the cliff, which would be feeling the bit of sadness, but turning toward it would be like jumping off the edge. Like I actually try to turn toward it sometimes when I wake up and feel it, and it never really works. Like it just doesn't happen. Something stops me.
Okay. We can also work in degrees. You can turn toward it 1 degree and just sit at the edge of the cliff, and things like that aren't so on off.
That's good to remember. Yeah.
And when we meet a part that's sad, we could ask it if it will agree not to overwhelm.
Yeah. Yeah, walking slowly closer sounds like a way to go.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious about how to do that.
Okay. And this part is willing to give you some space to do that?
Seems like it, yeah.
Okay. Are you curious about the sad part?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
How's
it feel? Go ahead.
I want to know. I just want to know more. I just want to know more about what it's sad about and how exactly it feels. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say,
how does it
feel to broadcast that curiosity? Like, how does that feel to you? And does that feel like a safe way of opening the door a little?
Yeah, it does feel, it feels good. It feels very open and like I might experience something or learn something new.
Yeah.
Expansive.
Uh-huh. Noticing any more about any sad parts?
Hmm. I'm just thinking about being in that state.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I do wake up at night and there's something, it's very different from most of my other day-to-day feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it feels bad, but it also feels like, I don't know, hard to describe, but like I'm sort of resting at the bottom of the ocean, and it's almost restful in a weird way.
Okay.
Like a form of surrender, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way that you can get this part's attention and ask it to notice you? Could
Let me
still be from a
see.
distance.
Yeah, it definitely is at a distance. Let me see. I think it did notice me just now. There's just a very slight feeling of warmth or something.
Can you say more? Where's that coming from and what's it
Like my belly area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just feeling that it's being noticed and acknowledged. And it's got, the word pain comes to mind. Like it's got pain. It's holding on to pain.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe this would be a good time to let it know or request of it that if it does want to share with you, to please promise to keep from overwhelming you.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Seems agreeable to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
It
Like's
seems
being acknowledged. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems relieved that there's a way for it to express itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the way, then that's good because there is a way.
Yeah, I think so.
It's used to hearing that there isn't a way.
Right. Right. It's used to there not being a way, not being welcomed by other parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could let it know that you get that. You've seen how they've been hard on it.
Let's see.
I didn't quite hear that.
Oh, I said, let's see.
Okay.
It is a very like faint signal that I have with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a while for messages to get across. Yeah. It's responding well to like just saying, I see how that's been hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's even interested in blaming other parts because it knows that the pain is something they'd want to avoid.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's been kind of holding on to that, trying to it's holding on to it, and that's the way that the rest of the system avoids it.
Yeah. And I guess it does feel unfair to it that it has to hold on to it, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how are you feeling towards it when you see this pain and this unfairness?
I feel really glad that it's communicating with me.
Yeah.
And I feel, if anything, just like if there's another part involved, it's like a nervousness that the communication is going to stop, like that I'm going to screw it up somehow.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part that's going like, this is going well, better not fuck it up.
Okay. Yeah. Can acknowledge that part.
Yeah. Yeah. It just wants things to go well. It's definitely like agenda part or like a related one to that, where it's been so despairing of any progress that when it finally sees progress, it's very hungry to continue. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, you could try getting a more clear signal by asking the part that's sad just to do that.
Okay, let's see.
Maybe to kind of come closer or let you know more of it.
I ended up finding a part in the middle that's afraid of it coming closer. So I'm reaching out to that one.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense that it's afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yep. One part that's concerned that you'll lose track of it, and another concerned that you'll get too close.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I want to ask, like, what level would this part be okay with?
You could also just ask, what it needs, if anything, to just give you the time and space, even if that's 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's see. What does it need? It's a certain kind of despair that it's afraid of feeling. Like, it's afraid of being overwhelmed by feeling that everything is wrong and nothing will ever get better. It's afraid of the same feeling I know I've described my like traumatic weed experiences to you, and it's like it's very aware that that feeling exists and does not want to ever have it again.
Right. And is that one of the feelings that this sad part is carrying?
I don't know, because I'm not sure if it's a feeling the sad part. I actually don't think it's a feeling the sad part is carrying. I think it's a feeling that other parts feel about the sad part.
Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if I'm sad, then that means something bad happened. And if something bad happened, that means that all my fears are real. And if all my fears are real, then everything is terrible forever. So it's like working off assumptions about the sadness rather than just experiencing the sadness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just let it know that makes sense. And maybe one thing that I'm thinking is that our aim is to get to know this part, and that doesn't necessarily mean experiencing everything it's experiencing.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't have to feel really sad to get to know the sad part.
Yes, that is true. It's good to remember.
Going back to that groundedness of curiosity.
Yeah, I can just ask the sad part to tell me about itself rather than share its experiences.
Yeah, and it already promised not to overwhelm you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that seems to reassure this other part.
Great.
So let me ask the sad part something else then, I guess. So ask it what it's sad about.
Okay.
Something along the lines of things are gone, things won't be the same. Something is lost.
Mm-hmm. And are you okay with the way that it's showing you that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anything, it's vague. So
It's vague. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like timeless in an interesting way too. It's not just related to this one death, although
Right.
it focuses on that sort of, but it's this very inherent
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
sense. Yeah. It's like there's not a one thing I can point to.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a feeling that I've had for a very long time
Mm-hmm.
of something is wrong. Like I'm even holding pretty loosely to the something has been lost. It actually might be more of just something is wrong. Something is wrong, and almost what's so scary about it is that I don't know what's wrong exactly. And I use the term scary, and I'm not actually feeling particularly scared in this moment, but
it is scared of not knowing
it
what's
is.
wrong.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you being with it now? Do you feel closer to it?
I don't feel closer in a proximity sense,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel very glad that I'm getting to learn more things about it. And I can feel like a feedback coming from it, like a positive feedback coming from it that it sees me.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. So it has pain, it has a fear. It's scary that it feels like something's wrong. It doesn't know, it might not know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's okay. You can
Yeah.
let it know that it doesn't have to have an answer for that.
Yeah.
For you to listen and be with it.
Yeah, that's true. There's plenty of time to get to know it more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something is wrong that might be irreversible.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the terror is that I don't know. And that not knowing makes it hard to even settle into a particular feeling of sadness or mourning or whatever.
Right. Right. Yeah. Are you okay with it not knowing and showing you how that is for it?
I am very glad that I'm connecting with it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also be lying if I said there wasn't a part that's still very interested to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Okay.
But I think that part is just gonna be there to some extent. It's just gonna hang out and be a little impatient.
Okay. Does it feel like, I mean, I'm hearing you say that about being glad to be able to communicate with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I'm very glad to be
you are
with
getting
it.
to know about it in a way that you
Mhm.
haven't before.
Yes, I definitely am. I feel very grateful for that. It's a very similar feeling to how I felt this morning when I was working with that other part.
Yeah. Yeah, just validating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you might.
It feels like making up
go ahead.
with a long lost friend or something.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I really like that. Yeah, and when you're making up with a long lost friend, sometimes figuring it out is not quite at the top of what's important.
This is true.
Yeah. So that was the message that I was thinking to send to the figure out part, is that there's so many dimensions of getting to know a part.
Yeah.
And connect with a part.
Yeah, we are figuring things out. We're figuring out that it exists.
Yeah. We're figuring out how to open that door, how to get close to it, and and hear it when you're awake.
Yeah. And it knows this. It just wants healing. And so it wants to chase healing.
All right.
So it's
and this
going
feel
to
like a healing conversation with this sad part?
Oh yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
Great.
It feels like it's on the right track. Yeah.
It said it had been doing this. This is kind of a timeless place that it's in.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a very old part, or a very young part, I suppose.
Yeah. Is there more detail you can pick up on around that?
It's something I remember feeling even as a very young kid, like a toddler. Although, yeah, I don't know why specifically, but yeah, it just seems very young.
Yeah, you could try asking it if it has any memories it wants to show you from around that time. Just as a way for you to understand it better.
Well, the images, like the mental images I have, are of being very young and just like being up at night. Like I really think that memory that I've talked about like crying and sensing that my dad was tired and stuff, like it's kind of adjacent to that.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this sense of like
something's wrong.
something.
I don't know exactly what it is.
Maybe I did something wrong.
Yep, Dad's not happy.
Yeah.
How are you feeling towards it as it shows you that?
Well, it's not alarming. There is just a quality control part being like, are you sure you've got the right memory? Blah, 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 blah. You know, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we can check that out. Check out if the feelings are, I don't know, coming from the same place, or ask the part.
Yeah. I think it's watching my connection with the part and wanting to make sure that I'm not getting distracted from the actual connection, which honestly is a good, I appreciate that part for doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, what feels right for you? What would be really connecting, opposite of distracting for you in this part?
I think to just lean into the feeling of it. Mm-hmm. And as much as I want to come up with more specific insights, as much as the agenda part wants that, I think I just need to lean into whatever it is in any given moment that connects me with it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let it know that you're willing to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel a bit more connected to it again. It's just got a feeling of uncertainty, just dread and uncertainty.
How are you responding to it?
I'm just kind of trying to experience it and sort of physically feel how it feels. It's kind of a feeling like a stomach ache or something, which is interesting because I've always had stomach issues stemming from my anxiety. Yeah, there's not like a very high level of intensity or something. It's just like,
right.
Yeah, just
you're choosing to let it share that with you.
Yeah, it's just a vague sort of connection that flips between like things are bad because the part feels bad versus things are good because the part feels connected to.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
Does it have that same validating kind of quality about it?
Yeah. It's just receiving attention. I think it must be a baby. There's a sense of like rocking a baby to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of my more Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Some of my more cognitive parts are still kind of running around going like, that's it. It's just it's just a feeling. There's no information. But if it's a baby, it makes sense that there's not much information. It's just a confused, upset baby.
Yeah. Who might just need to be rocked.
Yeah.
And are you still feeling that kind of grounded, you're in the right place? And
somewhat, but not as much as before. Guess I'll try and go back to that.
How's it feeling?
So I'm trying to connect with it. I think something with it has changed. And so like my efforts to try to connect with that same feeling from before aren't working, but I think that's because the part has changed and these other parts are kind of anxiously looking to grab onto the same feeling. So
Okay.
I'm just trying to locate it, and actually like ask what it needs now.
Yeah. Yeah, it had the dread and uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just wants more attention.
Okay. You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, me too.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems happier now. And I think that's why the other parts weren't able to recognize it.
Yeah. You could try offering if it would like to be in another place with you.
Yeah, let's see. I don't think so. I think it just wants to be where it is with me.
Okay.
I think it likes where it is. It just wants reassurance, which actually does make a lot of sense to me because my childhood environment really, especially when I was a baby, like there was nothing really fundamentally unsafe or wrong about it. It's just that
Those feelings.
yeah, I just wasn't always 100% sure that everything was okay, as every baby isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you can make that a standing offer that if it does want any change of scene or scenery, that's something you can do for it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I am very curious still about like what else it needs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'll slowly think I'll just find out slowly. I don't think this baby can be rushed.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And you have that intuition, of asking what it needs.
Yeah.
You also have, all the other intuition that can come from you. So,
Yeah.
feel free to make offers. And if it doesn't like them, that's great. That can be a way that you build trust and just show up for it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I think there's something like, I feel like a lot of my sadness is associated with like a vague sense of nostalgia too, of like wanting to go back to somewhere I was before. And so it makes sense that it wouldn't want to go forward in time.
Yeah. Well, you can also offer to go anywhere in time and go as many times as you like. So
that's true.
You can jump around with it.
It's a good point.
Yeah. And that's another one of those, pieces of information that's not always concrete because parts are kind of growing inside of you when you're there to help them. And those things can change.
Yeah, it's like they change very rapidly after a very long period of not changing at all because they were stuck.
Right. Right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you have the power to do.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
You could also, it talked about carrying these pains. That could be another kind of line of questions that you get to. Where is it carrying them?
Yeah.
Is there a place in its body?
Yes, I'm very interested in that. So I know where it is in my body, but is that different?
Do you want to just try asking it now?
Yeah, I'll try asking it. Oh, huh. Yeah, I think it's in its chest. Like, yeah, it's like a heart feeling that things are bad, they're sad, nothing is okay. That's so weird that it can be in my stomach, but in the part's chest.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also completely normal.
Yeah, it's wild.
And you could also offer to help it let go of some of that if it would like to. Again, maybe it needs a lot more attention and a lot more witnessing. All of these things can happen in different orders by different degrees. But you could ask it if it would like to give some of that up.
Mm-hmm.
And how.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't want to give it up yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Doesn't want to leave its space. Doesn't want to give those up yet.
Yeah, there's something important to it about what it's holding on to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, it is showing you what it needs, which is more attention.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but it seems to be pleased with the attention.
Yeah. Is there any way that you would like to negotiate with it or decide on how to check in with it in the future to get back to this place?
Yeah, I think maybe now that I've had a bit of time to let agenda part chill out and notice that things can actually happen from IFS without it intervening, then maybe now is the time to go back to like putting a reminder on my phone to check in with this part in particular, like once a day or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could also be, because other parts have been so quick to distract and have been between you and it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that those external cues might be more valuable.
Yes. Yeah. I think if I just leave it up to chance, it's probably not going to get worked on in the same way. I mean, I'll probably encounter it late at night still, but
if and when you do, the aim is just to get back to this place that you're in with it.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I'll just set a reminder on my phone, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I'll try that again.
Okay. I'm happy to bug you about it if you want.
I think I'll try just setting it, but if I need to be bugged, I will let you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, another thing you can do is just kind of check in with those protectors that you met along the way.
Yes.
Concerned about being overwhelmed, concerned that can't maintain the connection, or the opposite.
Yeah. If they're in the way, it definitely means they need something.
Yeah. Well, and you might kind of check in with them now and update them on your progress and you're getting to know this part in a way that they couldn't envision.
Yeah. So agenda part. Yeah. agenda part feels cautious, but slightly more optimistic than before. It's
Sad part felt happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It's like I'm telling it like it can. We're considering the phrase "trust the process" together, and it is willing to consider trusting the process. It's not all the way there yet.
Yeah, and the good news is that the process is not external to you. You know, if the IFS library burned down, like you got it.
Yeah. That's true. I think it's more of a like, I think Jerry is in there too, going like, did you really experience something or did you just make it all up?
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah. Any other protectors that you want to update?
I think it's really just agenda
if you turn towards sadness, then you just go off a cliff.
Yeah, there is that one. That one says that we probably just haven't found the right part that will send us off a cliff yet, but it's in there somewhere.
Okay.
So it's still on guard.
All right, but not so much for this part.
I guess not. Trying to see. It still thinks there could be something buried in this part.
Okay. But keep an eye out.
Yeah. But it hasn't been wildly overwhelmed by anything so far, so there is that.
Any other parts have concerns or were concerned or have any questions?
I think I'm mostly hearing from Jerry at this point. Jerry, the perpetual doubter.
Don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, it's very... He is very, like, making progress means so much to him that he's terrified of it not being real.
Okay. Yeah, I would say if we can track that, you know, we can track if it's real. And if it's not, then Jerry wins the bet.
He wants to know, how can we track it?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, I think.
Yeah, it is.
What is it that we're trying to track?
I guess ultimately what we're trying to track is how I feel on a day-to-day basis. If I still feel that sort of like looming fog and dread and like dullness.
Yep.
On any given day. Yeah.
And you feel like you have a pretty good sense of when that is higher and lower on different days. Like you're aware of it, and
I feel like I'm aware of it, but it's never really It's almost never like really gone, so it's hard to track the fluctuations, since in some ways it barely fluctuates.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if it did decrease by 5%, if that's something you would notice.
Yeah, I think it might have. Like, it certainly feels like something has shifted, but I think it might just take longer for Jerry to believe that this isn't some kind of just like random parts work afterglow. Like, he wants to know that it'll stick in my life.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I track how I feel when I wake up every morning.
Oh, do you have like a mood app or something?
I'm doing it in a very simple text-based way. But it's like 1 through 5 with decimals. So really it's 1 through 50. But I do that, and then maybe every 3 or 4 months I'll like put it all in a spreadsheet, and I track a bunch of other stuff. And I'm not suggesting necessarily you do all that, but I do find like, oh, here was a week where I felt bad, and here's what I was eating, here's when I was going to bed, all this other stuff. So you know,
I think
you could track maybe the hour that you wake up in the middle of the night, and how quickly you get back to sleep. Or
it's true. I think I could track like my subjective feelings either in the middle of the night or when I wake up, or both. I think when I try to put a number to it, I get all kinds of hangups trying to figure out what the number is. And I also think that tracking how easily I go back to sleep is probably the wrong metric, because I could just have parts that block out the sad part and help me go to sleep or something like that.
Yes.
Or that distract me.
Yeah, so some other way to...
Yeah. I think like a subjective, just like word or phrase that I write down might be good.
Awesome. How's Jerry with that? Or at least with that?
Jerry is interested. Yeah. He is interested.
Yeah. I want to be doing real things here, so I'm interested.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Any other parts have any concerns?
I don't think so.
Okay. Great job.
Thank you for all your help, as always.
Yeah. Glad I could be a part of it. Keep me posted.
Awesome, I will. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
So I've been thinking, the more I get into IFS, the more that I think that the more I become convinced that it's like I mean, maybe this is a no-brainer to you, but like that the top, the quote unquote top parts, like the outermost protectors need some of the first and like most attention, that you slowly have to work your way down, and that a lot of people, myself included, try to like push past that, and that you really just can't. And so I actually feel like I want to focus on my my top layer of protectors, which is like I know, a wild departure from like Agenda Part used to be like hyper focused on the exiles.
It did, but I think that we did a good job of not just pushing past protectors.
Oh, I agree.
Like,
I agree.
Yeah, the Agenda Part wanted that, but
yes,
our conversations have been more protectory than exile-y, I think.
Definitely, and I do like, yes, I appreciate that. And basically, I want to like devote time like specifically to the ones that are there, like right up against self, obscuring it, including Agenda Part, and just have that time for them and just see what happens from that. Because I feel like when I do make real progress toward exiles, I do feel like there's always some sort of kind of blanket of numbness or disconnection that's just there. And I want to talk to that numbness, and I want to talk to Agenda Part. And I just want to see how far I can get with that, because I feel like that would have huge implications for like making the whole rest of my work way more efficient.
All right. I like that you have a plan.
All right.
Would you like to start with some minutes of meditation?
Sounds good.
How many?
1 is good.
Okay. Okay. So you named Agenda Part, the blanket of numbness.
Yes. Those are kind of the two that I know Agenda Part's there. I have to figure that the blanket part is there, even though I haven't had too much direct contact with it. Okay. And maybe there are others like Jerry. But I think Agenda Part and the numbing part are the two main ones.
And which would you like to start with?
I think Agenda Part, because it's just very prominent. Like, it's still, even when I can get it to step back a little, I feel like it's still kind of like trying to intervene. It's watching very closely and giving its thoughts, and yeah.
And are you referring to it doing that mostly in your parts work?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yeah. I mean, it does it for everything, but parts work is when I really notice it, because that's when I'm really trying to get it to stop. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure I'm talking from Agenda Part right now.
Okay.
It wants to deal with itself, I guess.
Hey, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's been watching for a long time, and it knows what works.
Yeah. And I did, this is also inspired by like some peer work that I did with a friend, and just realizing that like for her situation, it was the same deal, where there are just parts kind of on top that were never dealt with. So yeah.
Okay, well, welcome, Agenda Part.
Yes, Agenda Part just really wants something to work, really wants success, and just doesn't want to let go of the prospect of success.
Okay.
And maybe it doesn't have to let go of it because, there are real strides that can be made through IFS, but it's like there is just this grasping and this like constant sort of like wanting things to change that feels like it pulls us all out of the moment a lot. Us all meaning all of my parts.
Okay. How do you feel towards it?
Concerned. I feel like it gets in the way of the progress that it wants so badly.
Okay. So that to me sounds kind of empathic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I do feel empathy for agenda part. But I also feel some level of frustration. Or
and is it
or even confusion or like helplessness, because it feels hard to get it to step back more than a little.
And you mentioned possibly talking from agenda part. Is it agenda part's own frustration and confusion?
I do think so, yeah.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think that's correct.
Okay. Well, whether that is agenda parts or some other parts, see if you can ask them for space and see how they respond.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's agenda part.
Okay.
It's like I want to give space, but I don't know what happens if I'm not driving this. Like what happens? Is it just parts just do whatever they want and say whatever they want, and there's no tangible goal in any of this? Because agenda parts doesn't want that to be the case.
Okay. Sounds like a great question. I have an answer that a part of me really wants to put forward.
Go ahead.
Do you remember our last session?
Yeah, with the baby.
Yeah. It didn't seem very agenda driven.
Yeah.
I mean, the agenda part was there, right? But
yeah, we definitely got somewhere with the baby, and it was great. It was great. But agenda part was still there, kind of watching it and making it. These parts that are sort of on top monitoring things, they just make it harder, I think, to access. Like they sort of like, even like when we get somewhere, it all feels a little bit dampened in some way or like removed. And what else? I had another point. I forget, but yeah. Okay. Like, yeah, I'll feel connected with a part. I'll feel connected with an exile, but there's like a restlessness off to the side that's like always there.
Okay. And the only reason I said what I said was just to see if the agenda part, recognized some of what happens when it's not driving.
Okay, that's a good point, because it still thinks that even if it has to step back for the actual work to happen, it's still thinking it's setting the agenda, and nobody else is really doing, like, nobody else in my system is doing the work of setting the agenda. And also, I remembered what I was going to say before, which is that I think this makes it hard for me to do work on my own, because like agenda part will give over some of the agenda setting to you, but when I'm alone, you're not there, and so it thinks it really has to run the show, which I think is why I just get so, like, I try to do individual work, but I only get so far before like this other part steps in. There's this other part, I think this blinking part that sees agenda part getting frustrated and is just like, no, we're not doing this. This isn't working. Let's not make it worse, and just kind of cuts things off.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And how does agenda part feel about it being in the spotlight and us trying to understand it?
It feels good now because now it realizes that that's important. So it wants to figure itself out.
Yes. Great.
Yeah.
And you can let it know that it doesn't have to figure itself out. I mean, it will learn, but invite it to notice you.
Okay.
And that it can just be the one, again, if it's in the spotlight, it just gets to share what's up for it.
It thinks I'm just this like passive thing that can like provide approval or something, but can't really like make meaningful choices.
Okay.
And that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
So we could address that, or we could just ask agenda part if it will let you be known better by it and see how it feels, what it feels like to be in your presence if it is merely passive.
It feels good to be noticed a little bit. Like it feels a little bit good to be noticed, but there's still a hesitation of like, what use are you? That sort of thing. It's kind of doesn't really believe I'm real. Like I do feel very blended with it still.
Yeah.
It thinks it's me.
Yeah. And the what use are you, again, going back to like, because it thinks you can't make meaningful decisions, whereas it is all about that.
Oh, wait, say that again?
Agenda part is all about meaningful decisions and
agenda part really wants to push things forward and change things, see progress.
Okay. Well, you could try asking it again for space just to let you get to know it, because it will be, if agenda part is at the top of agenda part's agenda, let it know that that's the process, is letting self observe and all the other things self can do.
Yeah.
So just try asking it for that.
It thinks that if it steps away, then I'll immediately forget what I'm even trying to do right now. It thinks I'll forget trying to get to know it because there will be no agenda.
Right. And because the blank numbing blanket does that, right?
Yeah, the blanket, when agenda part gets frustrated, the blanket one is just like, let's pause this so that we don't frustrate the whole system, which I think is a good impulse. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Well, all right. So agenda part's concerned that you'll forget what you're doing if it steps back. Okay. I just wanted to know that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm here.
Yes, that sounds accurate.
So you can let agenda part know that I got this checklist tattooed on the back of my hand here.
Yeah, it feels a bit good about that.
And I could ask it those questions. So that's an option. But if it steps back and lets you ask it those questions and try to understand it from self, that will be even more efficient and you'll learn even more about it.
Yeah, I'll try that. And we'll see how far we get. What are the questions again?
Oh, I can let you know.
Okay,
so you
good.
you don't even have to know them. You don't even have to know them.
It's trying to make a checklist of questions. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I assume most of the callers don't have that checklist.
Right.
But they still get in self, and then I give them little prompts. And half the time the prompts are useless because they're already in self and they have a better question or way. And other times they lean on those prompts.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. How are you feeling towards agenda part?
Again, just a mix of like warmth and frustration.
Okay.
There's a feeling of like it doesn't really step back, so why would it start now, even though like it's important for it to? And then on the other hand, there's like an understanding of why it feels the way it does, and like an appreciation for how much it wants things to be better.
Mm-hmm. And the frustration was saying it doesn't step back, so why would it now?
Yeah.
But it did kind of step back some, right?
It stepped back about as much as it usually tends to, I think. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I guess it's not completely blended, but it's pretty blended. And it's also hard to tell how blended it is because it still thinks it's me.
Yeah, that's all fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. You could again kind of ask it to notice you. Mm-hmm. And or you can also just ask it from me or from you what it wants us to know about itself.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a surreal experience for it to notice me. And it kind of barely can. Then it wants to know. It wants us to know that it just can't imagine I can't imagine dropping its role. It has no real concept of that.
Okay.
And I do feel curious about what would happen if it did, what it would be like if it really did unblend for a bit. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious about that. I think agenda part is equally curious about that, but in kind of almost a hopeless way. It's like, yeah, I wish I could do it, but I've never been able to do it before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just ask it to try.
Okay.
Let it know you're curious to get to know it. How's it going?
I feel like I can feel kind of like I can feel its presence.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no meaningful sense of like, or very little, that maybe there's a little meaningful sense of like who I even am, with it unblended.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's unblended by like 3% basically, because it's kind of like, how can I unblend when I'm you? It's still just confused.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would make sense that it doesn't know who I am or who you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also one of those parts that I read about in the book, where like some parts do have like an amount of self energy themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it has like some, and I think it's been gaining more, which like is good on the one hand, but it also makes it harder to separate.
Yeah, it's getting better at IFS.
Yeah. Basically.
I get that. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It also mentioned that being kind of a surreal experience. Is that more of the just, how does it, it feels like it is you, so.
Yeah, it feels like without it, it's like what, I don't know, like I would just be like a vegetable or something. Like I would just float around in the ether and do nothing and think nothing.
Yeah. And if that were the case, let's say, and we did that in this conversation, what would be bad about that?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Like it feels sort of existentially threatening almost to like lose control in some way. Like this is interesting. There's kind of a fear of like not getting that control back, which doesn't seem founded, but it's there. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I do hear a lot of, it's talking about, I don't want to lose this role. I don't want to lose control. And I just want it to know that we definitely don't get rid of parts. And even in the most, wildly successful sessions I've ever seen, that it's not like at the snap of a finger, this part, that relationship is 180 degrees, and we never have any kind of, like, we lose contact. It's more of a strengthening the relationship and understanding more about a part. In a way it kind of has more influence after we get to know it.
It has a weird reaction to that. It's like, oh no, so that means I'll always be in the way. It doesn't want to either leave or stay.
Yeah. You'll always be part of the way.
Yeah, that is a good way of putting it.
But it doesn't have to be a struggle. I mean, as we've discussed, life is difficult and we'll have problems, plenty of them. But it can be more of a partner with self. Agenda part can be more of a trusty guide, or really any type of role it wants.
Okay.
But yeah, I've never seen someone or heard of anyone who, got into self energy and then just floated into space as all their parts waited behind and said, "No, what?" I haven't seen that. I don't imagine that happening, but
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Agenda part believes that, but is now just like, oh, so if I'm actually part of this, now there's a fear like, what if I am doing my job correctly already, and this is just as slow as the progress is, or as much as can be done, in terms of like, I have a hard time getting super far when I'm alone. I don't know. Like, it just feels like it's hard to connect to parts on a daily basis, sometimes in like any way, but like a sort of vague way.
Yeah. So the one who connects to parts is self.
Yes.
And agenda part isn't self. Agenda part might have its own connection to parts, but it doesn't have to be the one that does the connecting.
Yeah.
And so it can, over time, trust you to do the connecting with parts.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of self's specialty.
Yeah, and I've been having this sort of scenario play out where it knows that frustration with parts is a part. And so when I feel frustration with parts, then I immediately know I'm not in self. And then the one that cuts things off comes in and is like, stop.
Yeah. I mean, that's all sounds pretty reasonable to me.
It does. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't want to be taking steps backward by having your parts work be a frustrating experience for parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an example of a part that is aware of the degree of self.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious about that part too. It's just like this. It's like a frustration sensor. It's a bad time meter. And it just stops things.
Okay. It's on our list, and it's up to you if you'd like to shift, but I'd love to get to know more about agenda part also.
Yeah, we can keep doing that.
Okay. Okay. We were talking about some of its concerns, if it did step back or if it did relax in its role, especially during parts work.
Yeah.
Does it have any more it wants to share?
So a lot of the things you just said made sense as far as it being like a part of the process. And now it's got questions. Like, it doesn't know, like, is it already stepping back enough, or is it not? It doesn't know like what to do or what it's supposed to do.
That makes sense. That's its main thing, is figuring out what to do and what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned this happening in some degrees and having the 3% self energy. Is that percentage changed?
It has. I think it's more like I'd say it's more like 30% unblended now.
Mm-hmm. And so check with agenda part. So far, it has unblended, let's say 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 10x increase from 3.
Yeah.
And it was just talking about being concerned about not knowing what to do.
Yeah. It doesn't know how it unblended.
Okay.
So it's like, I still don't know what to do. I don't know how this happened.
Okay. How does it feel for it to be 30% unblended?
It feels good, but also scary because it's scared it's going to just blend again. It's scared that even saying that it's 30% unblended is going to cause it to blend and like worry more about everything.
Okay. I'll let it know that fear makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does make sense.
And I feel like in our conversation so far, there hasn't been really orders for many of us about like what it should do and what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it is having all these experiences of unblending seems to be happening, and what it's noticing about you, and useful questions that are coming up. And we're getting to understand it better about its concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just want to reflect that to it and say that this is how it works, and this is how it works with other parts, is that our goal is to listen and learn and just show ourselves to parts and be there for them. And yeah, all of that is kind of not very agenda-y.
Yeah. It wants to know who is listening, it wants to know who is me.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an answer?
No, not really.
Look for the curious one. Or the one that's compassionate.
Okay, so I am the curious one. I'm the curiosity.
Uh-huh. Is there any compassion in there?
Not as much. I don't think.
Is that curiosity agenda's curiosity? Or is
partially, yeah.
Okay.
But not all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of, it's like, I'm thinking about 2 types of curiosity, one being like on the clock and the other not being.
Yeah, it's mostly on the clock. So, yeah, so agenda part is having trouble. It's like agenda part needs to see what self is like to like have some idea of what's going on. But it can't see self because it's blocking self.
How is agenda part experiencing me in this conversation?
It's experiencing you as it sees that you're trying to help and you're asking interesting questions, but it has like this sense of almost hopelessness about contacting self that's like that feels beyond like what anyone can do. It's like got this sort of real cynicism that that there's anything it hasn't seen, that there are any more transformational revelations that it'll find, which is also kind of funny because its whole thing is to try to create transformation, and it's skeptical that even is a real thing.
It feels hopeless.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it said that it sees me trying to help and asking interesting questions.
Mm-hmm.
Does it detect any qualities of self from me?
It detects it detects you being less invested in an agenda than my system is. It definitely like sees some parts in you sometimes, but it's like it is kind of like, oh, you know, you know what it is. It doesn't even understand the self in you either. It like sees it and it goes, this isn't agenda. I don't know what to do with this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's wanting to kind of figure out what to do with self, even if it's in others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I was just genuinely asking, if it was detecting that in me. I'm not trying to say that here I am 100% self and you'll never see a part of mine. So I just wanted to be really clear about that.
Yeah, and I don't even expect that from like anyone really.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't think. Yeah, and I think like also at the very least there is like even if you're not always in self, there's at the very least a part of you that's like got a different agenda of like following the procedure of IFS.
Yes.
So it's used that as well.
Yes. It's very observant. So I just want to let it know that in my self's presence, it doesn't have to figure anything out. And I know that might sound like that's what it wants to do and it enjoys. But I'm just offering it again to let me know it. And you could even say I have an agenda for that, but really it's all of us. It's Olivia, it's me, it's agenda part who are all trying to understand your system better. And understand might not be the best word for it.
Yeah.
It's to know it.
Yeah.
And to lead it.
Okay. So its job is just to explain itself, sort of.
Its job is to be whatever it wants. And it doesn't have to do anything. But I have enjoyed getting to know about some of its concerns, and I have time and curiosity to hear about any more that it might have. Because I think so far they've all been valid. They've all made sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels bad for feeling frustrated a lot. It thinks if it knows that it wants to not be frustrated with parts that it feels are holding back progress. But it, of course, can't help feeling frustrated. And and it knows it needs to like keep that frustration away from the other parts and like allow self through to them so that they can change. But it's not sure how to do that. Like it's still very like, how do I step back? What does that even mean? What would happen if I did?
Yeah. And we're finding out somewhat in this conversation.
Yeah. It just wants to stop being on edge all the time.
Okay. And what does it need from you or from anything? What would it need?
It needs to be able to believe that things can truly get better. Because it just doesn't like how little access I have to parts and how hard it is to connect with them sometimes.
Right.
It wants to facilitate more of that connection and getting to know the parts.
I like that. It wants to believe that things can truly get better.
Yeah, and it thinks that the way things can get better is by welcoming all the parts and knowing them all so that they can have their concerns addressed.
Yeah.
But it gets frustrated with parts when it meets them, so it obviously can't do that work.
Right. Yeah. And has it seen how self has done that work with some parts?
Yes. And it's still frustrated by its own interruptions in that process.
Okay.
It feels like it's constantly on looking at things and like making things harder for itself, and it doesn't know how to stop.
What would it rather be doing?
It would rather be well, it wants to be able to relax. It knows now that would help both it and the system. And there's something else. I can't quite put my finger on it. Because it wants to relax and something. Like, because it doesn't just want to... It wants a job.
Yeah, it wants to facilitate really more connection.
What its job should be. Yeah, I guess so. It wants to get out of the way when it needs to. Maybe, no, I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe it just wants to get out of the way of progress at this point. I don't know. It wants to know that someone else is keeping an eye on progress.
Okay, great. So to me, that sounds different from doing the connection part. So it's talking about keeping track of the progress, keeping an eye on the progress.
Yeah, it doesn't want to keep an eye. It wants to stop keeping an eye on the progress because at this point it's convinced that it's not good at that.
Okay. So that's more relaxing. Is there anything else it would like to do with its energy?
Actually, yeah, I said it wanted a job, but now I don't know if that's true. I think it might just want to watch progress happen. It wants to watch good things happen and just be pleased with good things happening.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
does it feel like it's watching progress happen in our getting to know it in this conversation?
A little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It always feels like there's a little bit of progress going on. And this does feel even a little bit different than that because its concerns are being directly addressed.
Yeah. I completely agree that it does always feel like there's progress going on.
Yeah.
You could ask it how old it thinks you are.
Yeah, good idea. That's hard to say. Not getting a really clear answer because I think it's trying to ask itself how old it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How old does it feel?
I don't know. I think it feels like it's an adult, but I don't think that's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
It just thinks it's an adult.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you notice about it?
It's been around a long time. I've had this feeling for a long time.
Yeah.
At least since I was like in elementary school.
Yeah. Do you think it has done any protection?
You mean like for all those years? Yeah.
Any of those times?
Which times? Like in elementary school?
Anytime. Sure. Elementary school.
Yeah. Okay. I think it emerged like it emerged out of a feeling of hopelessness, out of a feeling of nothing working and of needing things to be different.
Okay. And it wanted to make that feeling of hopelessness go away.
Yeah. So it wanted to try to figure out everything it could in order to make that happen.
Does that make sense to you?
Definitely.
Are you familiar with that feeling of hopelessness?
Yes. So I'm not getting like I'm not getting like an intuitive sense of age in the sense of like looking at it and seeing a child or anything, but like I can definitely feel like the first time I felt that feeling when I was like 8 or 9.
Yeah. And so it makes sense to you why a gender part would be working so hard to keep that feeling away. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Can you show appreciation for that?
Yeah. It has worked really hard for a long time.
And is it noticing you?
Yeah, it's noticing a goodwill aimed toward it. It's kind of noticing that there's something bigger than it. There's like a sense of relief. Because I think it's helping it to remember that it wasn't always around, or that it wasn't always like this, even if it was always around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Putting it at an age where I started feeling that feeling means that there's a time when I didn't feel that feeling.
Right.
Which means that it can't be me in some intrinsic sense.
Sure. Yeah. Although some parts seem to be on from day one, and so the age thing isn't always crystal clear.
That's definitely true.
But when it noticed you, it noticed something bigger than it.
Yeah. And it noticed, well, I'm not sure like how long it's been in my system, but there's a clear point where like it got more burdened. And so it's a good reminder that that there is like a burden, and that the burden is not me.
Right.
Yeah. What was the question you were asking again?
I don't think I was asking one. I was just wanting to highlight and learn more about how it feels for this part to be in that presence of you. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it said something about a sense of relief.
Mm-hmm. There is. There's like a sense that it's not the only thing, that it's not
alone.
My actual eyes. It's just, yeah.
And does it feel like self it was concerned that self would just be a passive thing that would provide approval? Does it still see self in that way?
Kind of, yeah. But it's like, it's kind of it knows this intellectually, and it just really wants to know it on a visceral level. Like it's already read up and it's found out that like,
well, it said it felt relief.
It does, yeah. But and so it is experiencing that a little, but it's not it's not like some final light bulb moment of understanding that it knows exactly what's going on. It's more a feeling of like, I don't know exactly what's going on, and that's okay. And it knows also intellectually that is the right path, but it's just kind of like,
it would prefer the light bulb.
Yeah, it needs to learn to accept the not light bulb, and of course it will, as long as we keep going down this path, but it's just a change for it.
Yes. What I'm hearing is this, I mean, just to summarize a little, agenda part recognized, or you and agenda part recognized, that it was getting in the way of your ability to connect with parts. It was concerned about not knowing what to do if it did step back. And it said what it wanted was to relax and watch self connect with parts.
Yeah.
When it noticed you and it sees you bigger, it felt relief. And so connecting with parts brings them relief. And that goes for it. And it goes for other parts.
Yes.
So it was concerned about how exactly this is done and what gets done. It was concerned if it stepped back that you would float off.
Yeah. When it's I feel like it goes back and forth, and I think it's more blended now than it was a minute ago. But even
I talk too much.
It's okay. Literally, it can blend at the drop of a hat, you know.
Mine too.
But during that moment, it just felt like it almost didn't really even see. I don't know if it even saw me, or if that's the right way of putting it, or maybe it's more like I saw it. There was just this feeling of like, the part is small and it's actually surrounded by adults right now, because there are at least 2 adults in the room.
That's right. Yes.
So it felt like when you're a kid and you're like struggling with something, and then your parent comes in and is like, "Hey buddy, like we'll figure this out."
Right. Yeah. So I also don't want to jump over the thing about the light bulb. I think that is a valid concern, and I don't want to just laugh it off like, oh yeah, wouldn't that be nice? We would all like that. This part needs to accept that. I would also be curious about what is it afraid would happen if there wasn't a light bulb kind of process. Like why that? Obviously because it's faster and easier, but what's it concerned about if that's not how this works?
It wants to understand things because it's like if I understand something, I can replicate it and I can make sure that it happens again and that it happens the right way.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And it just kind of wants to know the secrets of the universe. It's kind of curious, actually.
Yeah. Got all that.
Yeah.
I think we're doing a lot of that, honestly.
Yeah.
Feels like a conversation we might have had before, but we are learning right now. We are learning how to replicate this thing that we can't fully explain. Like, we know that it seems to be some type of secret of some universe, and we're practicing doing it so that we can understand it and replicate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it basically already knows, some of the secrets of the universe, and knowing it already has the light bulb, really, and having the light bulb just doesn't help always. Not or it doesn't help all the way. Yeah. Because you have to actually do the thing.
I like to think about 1 trillion light bulbs. And it's not about having one and is it on or off, but how much can we expand that? How far can we push our knowledge or our compassion?
Like how many parts can we get to know?
How many parts, how many people, how many interesting statistics about cats or whatever. Like there's, and I agree with it that we have some secrets of the universe and some others are on the other, beyond the frontier.
Yes. And I think it'll be happier with mysteries once it feels happy in a general sense. Once it feels cared for. Yeah. Then it can celebrate mysteries instead of hating that they are not figured out.
I also want to return to the thing about the feeling of hopelessness. And I'm guessing that is an exile. And I think hopelessness was even maybe a topic of conversation from last call when you were rocking a baby. I'm not sure, but
I think so.
I remember you saying at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah.
I think hopelessness is a big theme in my system.
Yeah. So you could check that out with this agenda part and say, what does it think about you doing this same learning and connecting with that hopelessness part? And would that help the agenda part relax?
It thinks it's not clear on it wants to address the hopelessness but it doesn't even know where its exile is or what the exile is or if the exile is even separate from it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the one that figures all this out.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
there's
it likes
2
the
other
idea.
adults in the room.
Yeah, it likes the idea of having the hopelessness answered and cared for, though.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So I would just send it that message. It doesn't have to be the one to figure that out. And Olivia and I can. I'm putting my agenda part is putting down that on the piece of paper here, the hopelessness part as a part to look out for.
That sounds good.
And yeah, we can go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's hard for agenda part to imagine not feeling hopeless, but it feels like it got a little taste of what it might be like in that moment where I was able to connect with it.
Mm-hmm. And like, if you were going to describe that process for you, like, how did you connect with it?
Was it was like it unblended and I could see it. It felt like it was this part of, but it was a part that was part of a context instead of me. But I know there was like something you said in particular. We were trying to figure out how old it was. And then I went back to the feeling
Of hopelessness?
And I went back to like the origin of the feeling.
Yes.
And that's when I realized that the feeling had an origin.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, the context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's another way you could describe parts work is recontextualizing parts and getting their names and their stories. And so that's how you can continue to connect with the agenda part, is by revisiting that context.
Yeah, it does seem like that's big because I'm thinking about it again and I'm getting another little like wave of that same feeling of like, oh, context. Like this was at a time where this thing happened and it makes sense that I got that feeling from the context. So, yeah.
Nice. What's next? Do you have anything else you'd like to ask of this part or commit to it?
I want it to tell me as much as it wants about the context. I want it to like, I just want to move more and more towards the feeling of like softness and like warmth. And and it looks like asking it about the context is like the way to that at the moment. So
yeah.
I just want to keep up with its needs. So I want to keep following it wherever it takes me.
Yeah. Sounds like compassion. It sounds like a non-agenda like curiosity.
Yeah, it's like there's some of both. But
and the natural, just like you talked about connection and warmth and how those are just seem like obvious kind of directions that you would want to go.
Yeah, it's like more of a genuine warmth than it was before. It's not completely warm, but it's not cold like it was.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds like you're in the right place. I would just say stay with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any more questions for me? Parts have any questions for me?
I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, agenda part is just always there's this very paradoxical thing about this, which is like when I describe and find like a process, then agenda part latches onto it and wants to do it, and then it blends again. And so I just got to keep observing that cycle.
Yeah. It's really tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's hard to really imagine an agendaless life or day.
Yeah.
And caring about the process. It's like, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to do a process.
Exactly. It's like, how do we do the process without doing the process? And it's still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so sometimes I just know that can be, we can get hung up on, does self have an agenda? And I think that that's also part of the answer, is that it's not exactly the process that we're trying to get right. It's
the connection.
Showing up. It's the connection. It's showing up in self energy and making connection.
Yeah.
So the process is just the best tools that we think we have used before, that we're going to try to use again.
Yeah. I think agenda part doesn't have much more to say, because it knows that like words don't words aren't it. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you find those better, faster, deeper ways to connect with parts, you are going to be beyond any process that can be put in words.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Talk to you next time.
You too. Talk to you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Do you want to help bring more self-energy to the world? If you'd like to participate in calls or help out with this project in any way, I'd love to hear your ideas. Join the Discord server or contact me at james@liveifs.com. A huge thanks to our audio engineer, Yvonne, for your care and diligence in editing the calls. To every caller for your courage in sharing some of your parts. And to anyone out there getting to know their internal system, keep going. Who knows, that might be the most selfless, helpful thing you can do for others, and you're the only one who can do it. If you'd like to see us reach the largest audience, we must please the almighty suggestion algorithms at iTunes and YouTube. And they don't care about the power of IFS. They're looking for likes and shares and comments, and the sooner the better. Follow the links in the show notes right here in your podcast player to make your wishes known. And now, a minute of meditation. Or if you prefer, pull over. You can do it in 60 seconds. Just click one of those links. They're right there, and give us a like or a 5-star rating. It would really help. If you think this project is helping people, you're helping people by sharing it. Thank you.